So thank you for allowing me to be here, and really thank you for rescuing me from the movie night. Now, when I received the text message from Mark 4 days ago, asking me to preach, teach, or devote on any topic, I was equal parts excited and anxious. I must admit that in my preparation, I grew quite intimidated, to be honest, because I knew the faces that I would be looking out into tonight. You are a group of people that I'm used to listening to and learning from and observing and gleaning wisdom from. So this week during preparation, I kept asking myself, do I really have anything to offer them? And the answer is, I'm still not sure, but I sure tried my best. So thank you for allowing me to share with you tonight. So what I felt led to talk about is somewhat personal. And whether you know it or not, many of you have experienced this with me. But as I was preparing, the news of Orlando kept piercing my thoughts and really wrecking my conscience. So tonight, as I talk to you about identity and what I've personally come to learn about identity, I'm also a little bit fearful. I'm fearful of stepping on toes or crossing boundaries, but I'm really just more fearful of not saying anything at all. So, I will say. And to be honest, if tears make an appearance, as they did while I was writing it, it is my prayer that those tears will not be seen as weakness or as womanly emotion, but as a deep desire and a pure conviction and a sincere passion for all people to know that they are loved by a God who created them and loves them more than they can fathom. So most of you know that Walker and I recently bought a home. We bought a home because we both feel like Lufkin has become our home. This church has become our family, and we feel called and we really want to stay here. But my transition to Lufkin was rather rough. You see, in Waco, I was there a total of 8 years almost. In Waco, I knew who I was. An onlooker would have seen me running across Baylor's Mall in flip-flops with my high heels in hand. After teaching my 20 or so sleepy freshmen the basics of Spanish over at Baylor's main campus, I would run from the language building over to the seminary where I sleepily sat through my own classes. I would plop down at the table, out of breath, slyly slipping the high heels back on their proper feet. 80 minutes of theology went by, and then back across campus for a lecture in Spanish linguistics. I was a young woman getting 2 master's degrees that had never before been paired at Baylor, so there was no dual degree. I was just doing 2 masters at once, a master's of missions and world Christianity, and then a master's of arts in Spanish. For those 3.5 years, I knew who I was. I created my identity. I was Katelyn Foster. I studied hard, I slept little, and I still somehow managed a social life, even if it was in the library at times. Now, I wasn't the best or the brightest. In fact, please don't think that I thought I was awesome. I was so tired and overcommitted that most of what I contributed was probably mediocre at best. But I did work hard, and I succeeded, and by pure grace and the help of a village, I completed both degrees. And then I moved to Lufkin. With only a 3-hour drive east, I suddenly found myself unemployed, unconnected to deep relationships, unsteady in my new role as a spouse, and even unsure of my health as a couple of doctors dramatically misdiagnosed a pretty simple medical issue. In short, for the first 12 months of my time in Lufkin, I had an identity crisis. There was nothing by which to measure myself by. I wasn't making good grades. I wasn't watching my students excel in Spanish. I wasn't busy. And I didn't really even have a name sometimes, as most people introduced me as Mrs. Walker's wife. I lost my confidence, my self-worth, my purpose, and probably a good thing, I lost my pride. And fast forward, and now I'm a Spanish teacher at Hudson High School. I've made great friends, and to say that I'm busy is an understatement. But these things are not who I am. And while these things are great, and they are things that I am overly thankful for, I'm most grateful for the year that I spent losing my identity and slowly but surely finding it again. Rebuilding it on something that can't be deconstructed with a simple 3-hour move. What I lost were my accomplishments, my hard earnings, my. I lost myself. Because yes, all of these things that make us individuals are important. Our passions, our talents, our occupations, our relationships, our accomplishments, our dreams, our successes, our failures. Those are only pieces of who we are. Because the reality of what we are, our identity at its core, is that we are God's creation. His beloved children created in His image. One of the most basic and first truths found in the Bible. All of us, each and every one of us, is alive because He breathes breath into our lungs. We are loved simply and we are loved complexly because He created us to be. It makes me wonder what it would look like, myself included, if we all from time to time would undergo an identity crisis or two. To crawl through the mud, shedding all the unnecessary weight of accomplishments and titles and achievements, and we find our way back to what we really are, loved children. And I wonder if we could see ourselves this way, loved in spite of all that we do right and all that we do wrong. Maybe could we begin to see others this way as well. While I was preparing, Walker could tell that I was visibly unhappy. So he asked me what was wrong, and of course I answered with, I'm fine. After many, no, you're not fines, I eventually admitted that I felt like what I had to say was too cheesy. It was too basic. It was too common sense. It's love. He quickly cautioned me that there is nothing basic when it comes to love. It's the very foundation of our faith, yet we miss it every single day. I miss it every single day. And when we miss giving it out, that means others miss out on receiving. So when the LGBT community after Orlando says that they don't want our prayers because of how Christians have treated them, I think we've missed it. When we fail to listen to other religions that promise they practice peace, and instead we easily and fearfully blame all of them for the actions of a few, we've missed it. When a mom almost loses her child to a gorilla, and we attack her and we call her negligent instead of rejoicing in his life saved and weep with her in her guilt, we might have missed it. When our political affiliations and our rights are higher than our Christian calling, we miss it. When I was alone in the church offices this afternoon, finishing up this talk about love, and a man I didn't know knocked on the door, and my first gut reaction was hesitation, and to be quite vulnerable here, it was fear as well. I really missed it. When we know love and we recognize love, but we choose to feel nothing or say nothing or do nothing, we miss it. And in today's world that needs no description, because we all know the reality in which we live, we cannot afford to miss it. We do not love unless, we do not love except, we do not love if we love. We love like Jesus did. So I'd like to look specifically at how Jesus loved two people in two completely different situations. First, in the Gospel of Mark, we have the familiar story of Jesus healing the leper. We understand, I think we all know that during this time, lepers were seen as unwanted, unworthy outcasts from society. To us, it's a skin disease, but to people back then, it was an incurable, God-inflicted curse. And Jesus, moved with compassion, healed the man. A man that had done nothing wrong, was not blatantly sinning against God, but was just sick. His actions did not bring about his affliction. It was only an unfortunate disease. And at the end of the story, we're told Jesus was no longer allowed to even enter the town and had to stay in the lonely places because word had gotten around about the healing. Now let's skip to Luke and we remind ourselves of the story of Zacchaeus, a tax collector, seen as the lowest of the low in society because of his actions. He was hated of what he actively pursued. He stole money from his people, for the Roman government, and then kept extra for himself. Tax collectors were regarded as a class lower than sinners. But Jesus goes to his house, despite the mutterings of townspeople about him going to be with a sinner. And he announces that salvation has come to Zacchaeus' home today. To me, these stories are on completely opposite spectrums. One man who is just genuinely sick and none of his faults are even mentioned. And then there's the other man who is actively choosing to live a dishonest lifestyle. Yet the outcome is the same. Jesus sees these two men not for the pieces of who they are, but for the only thing that they are, beloved children of God. And he responds in love to both of their situations. Now we know it wasn't easy for Jesus in either situation. But regardless, Jesus goes into their presence. He touches them. He shows compassion. He treats them as human beings who deserve dignity. And I'm reminded of a quote by Jen Hatmaker while she spoke during a conference earlier this year. I tried to go find it word for word, but it was going to cost me $150 to download the conference sessions. So I chose to summarize it instead from what I remember. She said, if you're loving people and there is tension, then you're probably doing something right. Loving people is a hard thing, but it's the only thing. It might make you unpopular, like Jesus. It might cost you, like it did Jesus. It might upset people like Jesus did. You might feel lonely like Jesus. But what better reasons to be unpopular or disliked or lonely? Because you were too much like Jesus. Love is who we are. It's at the core of our identity and their identity. In fact, love eliminates the us and the them. It demolishes the idea of outsiders and insiders. It deletes labels and groups and fractions. And it reminds us that we are all one, created by the one who calls us all his children. His children no matter who we love or who we hate, who we serve or who we ignore. God loves us if we believe in him or if we don't. Whether we are the Pharisees or we belong to society's class that is lower than the sinners. We are loved because God is love. And he created us in love so that others will know him by our love. Because love bears all things, it believes all things, it hopes all things, it endures all things. And love never ends. And for that,